My name is Nogah Kornberg, and I spend most of my days working as a research associate at the Rotman School of Management. The other time I spend is on the Young Social Entrepreneurs of Canada, which myself and 5 other people founded. And it was in response to the question of how can young people spend their lives making money while changing the world. And it shouldn't be a trade-off between one or the other, but rather how can we do them as our full-time careers. And we've basically become a network of over 700 young people in Southern Ontario and across Canada, which further the conversation around social entrepreneurship. So just as much as we connect people to resources in their communities, we also are like, what are the interesting tidbits of conversation we can be having, and how can we, kind of given this bird's eye view, help to further that conversation? I've always been involved in social change. It's been something I've been doing since I was about 12, so over half my life. When I was 14, 15, I became involved with Free the Children, and what I found there was a really incredible community of young people, and saw the effect that young people can have on changing the world. And at the time there was something about believing and knowing that young people can actually make a difference that I found to be a very moving and compelling thing to dedicate my time to and my life to, as it so happens I've done. There were a group of us that ended up coming together, and we started talking about what it would mean for young people, to make it possible for young people to make money and change the world. And that's how we came across social entrepreneurship and social enterprise. So for me, it's always been this notion of how do we connect young people to the resources, opportunities, networks, anything to allow them to be successful. And they can define success how they want. I'm not here to do that for them. So it's really that bridge that I still hope to build. Like, that's, I think, what I've dedicated my life to. And with the Young Social Entrepreneurs of Canada was allowing social business for that experiment to take hold in society and see how far it could take us. I was asked recently to kind of name some really neat examples of socially responsible businesses. So I would say one is Social Asset Measurements, that's run by Anshula Chowdhury, and she's actually one of YSEC's founders. And what she's doing is making it easier for socially minded organizations and businesses to measure their impact. Because one of the biggest questions that social enterprises really bring to the forefront is, how do you know you're making a difference? Like, it's nice to say, oh, a kid went to the school, or a kid got lunch from this program, or somebody who didn't have employable skills now has them. But what we want to know is, how did that impact their life? And she's making it much easier one to gather that data, to analyze that data, and then change your programming to make more social impact. MMB Research, they've created a hardware and a software that appliance manufacturers and electronics manufacturers put into their appliances. So next stove I buy will have their technology in it that can talk to my smart meter and will allow me to change the way I use my energy in my house. So another example of making it easy for anybody to engage in living more responsibly. Traditionally, in business, your clients and your customers are the same thing. So the person buying your product is a person paying you. In a case like a social enterprise, we're seeing a lot of them where your client might be, a homeless individual, but the person paying you might be a wealthy business person walking down the street. So those business models need to be played around with more, so we can have examples of different ones that work in different cases. And I think metrics is being the other one, is let's really challenge ourselves to understand what is a social good we're actually having, versus just assuming that stories and anecdotes are going to be enough to prove that we're doing good. Given that most of the people coming into the space at the moment are coming from the more social side of the equation, so a lot of people who've worked in nonprofits and realize that there's a challenge in that business model because it doesn't make enough money, or people are like, I really want to do social good, but I want to make it my career, so I'm going to start a social enterprise and just figure it out. Really put on your thinking business hat. You have to think about, how am I making my money? What are the costs going to be? How much can I charge? Who am I charging? And asking the questions that every single business in the world to be profitable asks themselves. And figure out, what does that business model actually look like? And then how do you make it so that your core value that you're providing to society is that social good? But it's really the biggest challenge that we're seeing in conversation is a lot of people are coming without thinking like a business person, and they're coming to be like, I'm going to do good in the world and I'll figure out the business side after. It is a way to go about it, but it's a very challenging way to go about it. And the post to right from the beginning is, what is the product or service that I'm going to offer? What is the social good that it can do? And how am I going to make money doing it? And asking all those questions at the same time. Don't stupidly fail, I guess, is the idea. Like, if you're going to fail at running a social enterprise, be smart about it. Know that you put in the time and the energy to make sure that the idea could actually happen. On Saturday, March 26, 2011, the Young Social Entrepreneurs of Canada, we brought together over 100 thought leaders in social entrepreneurship. The reason we had the conference this year was because from our vantage point, we saw that conversations were happening in silos. And what we really needed to do was bring all these people to the table and harness our collective brain to figure out, where are we now, where are we going, and how do we get to the ideal social enterprise place in Canada? And what came out of there was there were going to be like some key pieces to what's going to happen in the future. The first one is that collaboration across these silos is going to be key. The more we can learn from each other, the more that social enterprises will have the abilities to be successful, because we won't be repeating mistakes, or we'll be better able to learn from them. The next big learning that we had was that money, if we communicate properly to the outside world, won't be such an issue. And we came to an understanding that if we could communicate to investors, to grantors, to the general community, what is social enterprise, what is its value to society, then that money was going to be able to come in a lot more easily. And the last piece is that we need to demonstrate success stories. Was that the more that we can have young people and older people, if we have just as many older social entrepreneurs as young social entrepreneurs, if the more we can demonstrate these success stories, the more people are going to be willing to come on board and have this conversation. And the ultimate goal is that to create a social economy so that all the money we spend and all our energy is constantly being used to improve the world. Whereas now, that's not so much the case. I think what we need to do is recognize that there are different models of social enterprises that all have different impacts on society. There's so many different kinds and so much innovation happening out of it that I imagine it's a really exciting time because nothing's set in stone yet. We're still experimenting with what they can look like, which means anybody can kind of join in the game and join in the fun. I think youth are really trying to build this bridge between I'm finishing university or I'm in the middle of it trying to figure out what to do with my life. I know I want to do social good, but I know I need to make money and I'm willing to take any job because there aren't any. And knowing also that social entrepreneurship, or that entrepreneurship creates new jobs, that the more that we can propel these great ideas to become bigger, the more opportunities there will be. And we were young people ourselves, so we decided that, knowing the capacity that youth have to do good and the strong core belief that they have the ability to change the way things are done, who better to be the innovators than our peers? And that's where the youth piece came in. But the more and more that I'm in this is one of the things that happened at Revision was we had all age groups represented. And it was such a pleasure and such a gift to hear from people who've been in the sector so much longer than we've been, and the knowledge and the wisdom that they can transfer down. So why youth? Because I think we need it. I think we need jobs that allow us to change the world. I think we're ones who are open to innovation, that aren't stuck in a particular way of doing things because we haven't done it for that long. But I think we need the wisdom of people who've been doing it as well, longer than us, to know what the hell's been going on before us, where are key places that we can innovate around, and how are we going to really propel social enterprise and propel the social economy. When we came onto the scene, we were a group of people working out of an office trying to further this conversation along. And that was, over a year and a half ago when we launched. And that was after a year and a half of conversations in living rooms trying to figure out could this actually look like. And to know the part that we've played in bringing young social entrepreneurs out of their silos and into a larger conversation, as well as the voice that we've given young social entrepreneurs. So we do sit in a lot of the bigger conversations happening in the city. When these conversations are happening, we are invited to them. We are seen as a voice to represent our community, which I think just puts a lot of faith in the work that we've done and the relationships that we've built with our community. So if we're talking about young people finding a niche and finding a need and finding a way to meet it, that's exactly what we've done. And who were we? We were a bunch of people trying to answer a question. This conversation wasn't happening a year and a half ago, and yet now we're at the center of it. And we're doing it for the purpose of advancing young people's experience. I think that's pretty cool.